Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2 of this special extravaganza with the Z9 camera. We spent our first hour with photographers that did still shoots, and we talked about the still photography side of the Z9. Now we're going to delve into the video side because it's as much a capable video tool to filmmakers as any other tool on the market, and it's so incredible how we keep raising the bar with technology. So for this particular panel discussion, we have to my far right Mr. Corey Rich, a good friend of mine for decades now, right, Corey? Welcome to the program. You're a photographer, filmmaker, but you're more of a director these days, right?
That's right. I mean, I love telling stories with visuals, and I think we live in a world where we can use both still photography and video to communicate because the cameras really enable us to use both, shoot stills and video.
Well, you and I had a fantastic time out in Colorado, and of course you kept me up till 3 in the morning every night, which was great. I love those night shoots, but countered by 14,000 feet in Christy Odom. Who I met you when you were a wedding photographer, but now you do a lot of work with conservation wildlife, and we tasked you to shoot a video and talking about 4K at 120. But welcome, Christy, to the program.
Thank you so much.
So good to have you here. Thank you for the opportunities to not breathe well for a few days, but that was good.
I brought you oxygen.
Yes, yes. I got the canned oxygen. And to my left, we've got Mr. Jerry Guionis. Jerry and I have known each other for a very, very long time. I remember we met at a trade show. And Jerry is an amazing still photographer, but does so much in the wedding business, the commercial business, but you have transitioned into filmmaking now, correct?
Last couple of years have been amazing. It's given me an opportunity to increase my skills and my skill set, and doing so much BTS video over the last 13, 14 years, it was a beautiful transition. And it's come at the perfect time in my career, so I've had a great time.
Yeah, this is great, and I can't wait to delve into this stuff because I've seen some of the footage, I haven't seen it all, and I'm excited to see the behind the scenes. So we're going to see not only your work that you created, but a little bit of behind the scenes so people can get a feel for what it was like on stage with you or on set. And it's pretty remarkable what you guys pulled together, so I'm really, really proud and happy to be here. Now, we started off in the first session with our technical guru, Mr. Mark Cruz. Mark is back with us again now. And there's so much to talk about, and there's so much footage we want to see that we want to jump right to it. So Mark, I'm going to turn to you, and as you did on the still side, talk to us about the video advantages of the Z9. Why is it so powerful?
Well, it starts with the fact that I'm even here on the panel because typically when we have a flagship camera, it's not really the top spec at video. During the D5 days, I would rather shoot a D850. During the D6 days, I'd rather shoot a Z6. This is a paradigm shift where our flagship camera now is actually our best video camera. So when we did the development announcement a few months ago, the 3 specs that we put out there was new processor, new sensor, and 8K video. So that was really the highlight of this, was that 8K resolution we've never hit before. So now we're doing that in a big way. So, that's kind of like the headline feature, but in addition to the 8K resolution that we're doing internally, okay, so no external device, but to the memory cards in there, we're also breaking barriers in terms of time that we're recording. Typically, we've been relegated to a 29-minute, 59-second plateau. Now we're quadruple that. So, and even at 8K 30. So, I mean, I'm just hitting the viewers with those specs right off the bat and saying that this flagship now is our flagship video camera that can do up to 8K 30 internally for over 2 hours. And I think that's a big thing for us.
That's remarkable. Corey, you've had limitations of 29 minutes or so. Is that a big deal for you?
It's pretty amazing. I mean, I think it just makes the Z9 all of a sudden can be used for different styles of filmmaking. Meaning, if you're a verite shooter and you want to roll long clips, or you're shooting a pilot show, or just anything that requires, or you're going to leave an unmonitored camera on a slider going back and forth, or it's now a possibility. I mean, I think this camera fills the gap. This is now a professional level camera for filmmakers.
We've heard in earlier models from other brands this concern about overheating. What's the deal here with the camera? Because I know it's built to move air, keep things cool internal. Talk a little bit about the overheating and the fact that you can run 2 hours without overheating in normal temperatures.
Yeah, typically, I mean, you should not be able to, but when we decided to make this camera, we paid a lot of attention and there was a lot of debate about how we should create the body. And for the still side, the decision to have an integrated vertical grip gives you the options of vertical controls, and we talked about the tilting screen, But the advantages for video is the heat dissipation. So just the way that the chassis is built, there's a heat dissipation here that really allows us at normal operating temperatures to shoot for 2 hours continuously, even at 8K, which is really processor intensive and generates a lot of heat typically. But just our intentional decision to go with a bigger body gives us the advantage of heat dissipation, which, I mean, a few months ago to shoot 8K in a smaller body resulted in overheating after a few minutes. Now we're confidently shooting at over 2 hours, and that's huge because it brings 8K into practicality.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now 4K 120 added to the camera. Talk to me about how important 4K to 120 is.
I think everybody on the panel will tell you that, but I remember going out to wedding photographers and saying, you know, what is the thing that you need out of a camera to do? And they said, you know, we need at least 4K 60. If we had at least 4K 60, we'd be able to slow things down just that little bit. I think the ability to couple the high frame rate with the high resolution, that for a lot of people may be even more attractive than 8K 30, because just being able to shoot 4K at 120 is going to give them a lot of options. So again, that's a benchmark we've never hit in any of our cameras. The highest we've been able to go so far is 4K 60, you know, and that even in some of our cameras comes at a crop. So now we're going to be able to do things like full frame. There's very few asterisks when it comes to the video performance in this camera. A lot of the resolutions are full pixel readout. So the image quality that you're getting in there is amazing. And when you downsample, I don't want to get too techie, but down to 4K, doing the full pixel readout is going to give them excellent image quality.
Christy, we turn to you for this feature, right? Tell me, how important is that to you?
I think it's amazing. It's kind of crazy because I feel that nowadays I'm almost connecting with nature through technology at the end of the day, which one of the reasons I love photographing wildlife is I love that connection with wildlife and wild places. And when I put that slow motion video on my 4K monitor at home, the details and the things I was observing and seeing made me connect even deeper to my subjects. And I'm like, I shouldn't be connecting while looking at my TV screen. Like, this is something that you feel out in the field. Because slow motion gives us the ability to see so much more and so many more fine details, and to be able to see it at that resolution, it's kind of amazing.
Jerry, some amazing specs that Mark's brought up right out of the gate. Where did your mind go right away? What was your first impression of all of this when you grabbed the camera for the first time?
Well, like I said before, for me it was a natural progression because I've been photographing for so many years, and I consider myself a director that happens to be holding a camera. So to all of a sudden to create the movement and have 8K, and if you're running out of time, to be able to shoot 8K and then just crop in, you don't have to do 2 angles or 3 angles, which of course you want to, and you do if you have some time, but it just gives you options, it gives you choice, and it gives you freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just so much to it. And we want to delve into all of this, but Mark, talk a little bit before we get into some of the stories that Corey and Christy and Jerry have created, the films. Talk about the autofocus on the video side.
Yeah, what we've done is we've transposed a lot of the autofocus technologies that are in stills over to video, and I'll name specifically subject tracking. So the subject tracking, whether it's any of the 9 subjects, can be ported over into the video as well. That means, if you're keeping on someone, while they're moving, it can be an autofocus full time, but also detect the eye and follow it anywhere in the frame, virtually, literally edge to edge. The other great thing about it as well is just the subject detection. You have the flexibility of, as you said before, turning it off, but also relegating it to certain subjects. I mean, for the most part, you're going to be shooting people, so you can leave it on that. But if, like Christy is going to be recording an animal, it can also fine-tune that algorithm to detect even the eye of the animal in video. So having that 9 subject detection autofocus system is big, not only for stills, but for video now as well, because you can, I think, more heavily rely on the AFF, that's autofocus full time without actually pressing the shutter release, and changing the way they film in that way.
Yeah, Corey, I remember you saying something about the AF when you first picked up the camera, you started playing with it, that you typically as a filmmaker wouldn't rely on AF. but does this change the game a little bit?
I think this really does change the game. I mean, you know, Jerry and I were just joking that in video, as long as at some point in your shot, something's in focus, that's art. And I think we're now in this world where, I mean, this camera is better than we are at focusing in video, which is, we're not accustomed to talking about autofocus in video. I mean, their entire career is built on pulling focus in the video world. And the camera was exceptionally precise and accurate in autofocusing and tracking subjects, be it a person, be it a vehicle. I mean, it was really impressive, and even in low light conditions. And so now when we want art, I think you need to flip out of autofocus mode and actually, you know, go in and out of focus.
No, that's great. And I really want to stick with you, Corey, because we're going to go around the table here, and we're going to talk about your projects and the depth of what you did and where the creative came from. And we're going to have an opportunity to show you all of the finished results, right? The finished video, and then we'll go back and we'll talk a little bit what happened behind the scenes. But Corey, set up. We're going to show your video. Set up what we're about to see. What was your vision?
Sure.
What was your
Sure.
story that you're trying to tell?
You know, I think I can speak for all of us that with photography and with video, we're trying to show people something that they don't get to see every day, right? Expose them to a part of the world or life that's surprising. And I'm through and through, I'm a rock climber. I love the outdoors. I love adventure. And there's this little known fact that climbers, boulderers, climbing small boulders, you know, 15 feet or less, when you really need to hold on to tiny holds and it's warm out, you climb at night. And so there's this whole subculture of boulderers or rock climbers that go out at night. Their day starts as the sun sets, and they spend, you know, they go late into the evening hours. And so I shot a film called Night, and really the objective was to give the viewer a glimpse into this subculture of elite climber that performs when the temperatures are cold.
Good.
And,
Let's run Corey's video now. Let's check this out. Night.
So, what'd you ladies do last night?
Oh, nothing much. Just hung out.
Oh, that was so good.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
We've been
Thank
friends
you.
for a long
Thank
time,
you.
right? We admit that
we sure
publicly
have.
here to
Yes, I'll
everybody.
admit
I
it
think everybody
publicly.
knows that. I purposely didn't watch this because I wanted to see the end result here to react. It was worth every bit of 3 a.m. And certainly I would have probably stayed up till 4 a.m. To have that created. So that was really great. Now, you talked about the theory behind the story, like the emotion, the passion. Seems to me you attacked the ISO of the camera. There were certainly some great autofocus scenes in there. Speak a little bit about that.
You know, I think the ISO was the big one, right? I mean, I remember when I pitched the concept of night, I think there were some folks at Nikon that said, let's just confirm that this is going to work at night. I mean, because it inherently
never
means
know.
we're shooting in extremely low light. And we ran some tests, and sort of, honestly, there was real awe. It was unbelievable how great an 8K file looked in really, really low light. And then I think the big surprise was we showed up on location. You know, these were big days, as Mike is alluding to. You know, we oftentimes started at 3 in the afternoon, so we could ideally set up in daylight hours. But of course, at 3 or 4 in the morning, when people are falling asleep, standing up, it was your ability to autofocus, or to focus rather, it's challenged. And watching the autofocus outperform us in low light was kind of the bonus. Like I had no idea that it was going to perform that well.
If I remember, I heard numbers like 2,000 ISO, 4,000 ISO,
Yeah.
5,000 ISO.
That's right. Yeah, I think we did climb into kind of the 4,000 ISO range. You know, I always like to look at projects and say, what was the teachable moment? You know, what would you do? We're all perfectionists. What would you do next time to make it better? And we shot on zoom lenses on our jib arm. You know, we had 2 different jib arms, so that we can put the camera in these impossible positions. And zooms are just convenient. But then we shot on primes on all of the handheld and sticks, all of those locations, and the primes just looked so good. You're just wide open, and it allows you to really see the world in a different way, because you're just leveraging the ISO and the Nikon glass, and it's so sharp, and you're wide open. And the knocked lens, we shot on the 2 best shots in that piece are the top out shots with the city just glowing in the background. And you realize, there's so much exposure that lens allows you to achieve. And of course that's art, because we probably never were in focus. But the reality is it was so stunning. And the teachable moment was, I wish we would have shot on primes the entire time, because now there's an amazing set of Z primes.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Now, the good news is, people, we're going to get to see a little bit of what happened that night, or over those nights at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. So we've got a really nice BTS video that we're going to run right now.
Okay, go for it.
Come on. Yes. She said nice work.
Day 0 prepping for the Nikon Z9 shoot. Video requires a lot of gear. Cameras, lenses, gimbals, drones, jib arms, lights. A lot of the day today is going to be spent prepping the equipment so that we can be ready to shoot tonight. Scene number 1, the coffee shop. This is where the video is going to start. The ladies have just finished climbing all night. So it's kind of fun to do the first scene in the video on the first day of our production. Excited to see this Z9 perform in the various types of light we're going to be shooting with. We're getting ready to shoot the drone sequence of the ladies driving into the mountains. So we have a really cool spot. It's just the right amount of open space, but you can see the Rockies in the background. And oftentimes with flights like this, it just takes a few attempts.
First drone shot is going to be wiping across this field and then converging with the road and the van. So we're going to try and get like parallax shot as them rounding this bend up there and heading up to the mountain.
We just flew the Z9, and because the Z9 is light and it's a small form factor relative to cinema cameras, we had 8K drone footage with Nikon glass, and we got 20% more flight time. That's a big advantage. All right, so this is going to be our bouldering scene, and what's unique about this is we're doing it at night.
For the city, why isn't Black carrying any?
We had hoped to be here a little bit earlier. We're definitely going to be setting up in the dark.
Okay, you're good there? Come our way just a little bit.
We're doing a lot of shooting at night. That's the spirit of this piece. And what that means is we have a black canvas and we only see what we put light on. So we are literally painting with light. And so a lot of time gets spent moving lights around, setting them up, changing exposure until finally we have a perfectly crafted frame. Now we get to just play. 120 frames per second at 4K. This is awesome. We're doing good. We're delighted by how good the high ISO looks on this camera. We're shooting video at anywhere from like 1250 to 2000 or 2500, and it looks just silky. It looks beautiful. Watching the autofocus system kick in on this Z9 is a huge benefit. I mean, it turns out the camera is better at focusing than we are. And it's kind of a new way of thinking that you can use autofocus in video. But I think we are here. The Z9 is delivering the ability to shoot video while the camera does the focusing for you. Part of what I really want to portray in this piece is sort of the joy and the fun of bouldering, going from one boulder to the next, kind of testing your physical ability, and just the friendship and camaraderie of being outside and pushing yourself.
Again, that was pretty awesome and a good reminder of why I was so tired those nights with you. But
I like the way he pretended to be working with the light stand out of the van.
you know that was a
Yeah,
setup.
that's right.
You know that was a setup, right? I heard him. Like, I'm not going to walk far with this, but just let's get this shot now.
Only you could point that out, Jerry. But it's,
We were about 6,000 feet, right?
you know what? Yeah, just above. We were above Boulder, Colorado, and we ended up in Boulder because I'm based in Lake Tahoe, California, and the huge Caldor fire started. You know, we had prepped to do this shoot in our backyard in Lake Tahoe, and it became really clear that the smoke was going to cause issues. And then eventually we got evacuated a few days before we needed to shoot. And so we relocated at the 11th hour to Flagstaff Mountain above Boulder, Colorado. So yeah, probably, well, you're the Colorado resident, just above 6,000 feet is probably where we were shooting.
Which was fun, and it was a challenge enough to carry all the gear up the hill. 25-pound plates, sandbags, jib arms, you name it, we're carrying these stuff. But it was a great workout.
I later handed that stand to Mike. Of course. Can you carry that thing up the hill?
Expectations. You get the camera. Did what your vision, when it melds with the camera,
I'll say
did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, the camera far exceeded my expectations. I mean, the camera far exceeded my expectations from the perspective of that combo of functional, usable autofocus in video. I mean, that's kind of like blowing my mind still. Like I have to retrain myself, and the crew said the same thing. We don't think that way. We think about autofocus in still photography, not in video, and that's now a thing. The high ISO performance, super impressive. I mean, real 8K. I mean, you saw some of those spinning moves that we did to transition back into night. That's possible because we can punch in. I mean, that's, we're the ability to go in and crop an 8K file or kind of have some creative liberties to move that 8K file. That's really big. You know, the way there's now no delay in the viewfinder. You know, what you're seeing on camera, what the camera is seeing is virtually exactly what you're seeing through the viewfinder, whether it's the electronic viewfinder, the back of the camera, or your external monitor. And that's an advantage. I mean, that's a pro level tool. That's what you want as a filmmaker. You know, the 2-hour runtime. You know, this piece didn't have interviews, but you know, the magic of interviews, you want, you know, it takes 20 minutes to warm someone up, and at hour, you know, 1, that's when you get the magic, and at an hour and 20 minutes to not have to do record cycles and tell them to stop. These are all huge advantages. And, you know, and we shot at night. All of the backlit buttons and displays, you don't want to flip on your headlamp and ruin the other guy's shot. And so the ability to sort of see your camera and be able to maneuver and manipulate the camera with backlit buttons is pretty huge.
You know, Mark, I want to bring you back in here because everything Corey is talking about is touched by Xpeed 7, right? Talk a little bit about Xpeed and how it plays into everything Corey's talking about.
Yeah, you know, the Xpeed 7 powers that 8K resolution. It powers the viewfinder experience, and like Corey was saying, everything you see there is in real time. I'll even mention as well, it might probably be handy for videographers to know this, but the viewfinder is actually the brightest in the market right now. So it can go up to, before it was a +5, it can go +6, 7, 8, and a high 1 and high 2. So it's 3,000 nits now, whereas previously the brightest viewfinder was 1,000 nits. So it is giving you that advantage of, I know you shot at night, but if you were shooting in broad daylight, for example, competing with the bright ambient light around you, you can better see your exposure resolution, get a better feel for it. But yeah, the Xpeed 7 does contribute a lot to these new resolutions and frame rates.
Christy Odom, we're coming to you. Yep. You fascinated me throughout this entire shoot just because of your energy, your will to go. Corey has us up till 3 a.m. You got me up at 4 a.m. so we can drive up into those same Rocky Mountains, only to 14,000 feet and 12,000 feet. And yes, I was gasping for air, but with all that aside, it was one of the best experiences I've had in my life. Nice small footprint of crew. Darren, the others, wildlife person along with us to tell us what we could and couldn't do. I loved her maps and all of this. Set up the video we're about to see of yours, and then we'll delve into it like we did with Corey.
Okay. I was so excited when I got the call to do this campaign. I had just come off a story that I did on pikas. It was
Pikas, just in case anybody wants to know, there's a pika. That's what a pika is.
I have no idea what a pika is.
You
but,
will see pikas.
Koalas are cuter, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, just wait.
I don't think so. So go back to the pikas, P-I-K-A.
I had just finished a digital story that I did for National Geographic on pikas. And so when I got the call, I was like, what do you think about high altitude wildlife? Because spending so much time, pikas, they're like the size of a russet potato. They're tiny. And I was going, I want to see how this camera focuses on this really tiny animal that I've been trying to get sharp shots of. I wish this camera was out a month before when I did the story, but I was like, I want to go, and spending all the time at high altitudes, because they hang from like 10 to 14,000 feet, I fell in love with other animals that were up at high altitude. So I said, hey, Mike, what do you think about going up to some...
Rah, rah. I was so excited to do that. I was saying to myself, I would love to be up at 14,000 feet and not be able to breathe, but that's okay. I do love animals.
You're a trooper.
I thought it was a great concept.
It was so much fun. And I just moved to Colorado back in October, so I've just fallen in love with the local wildlife there. And I wanted a piece that was somewhat close to where I lived. I did a piece last year on insects, and I really, really believe that there's so much beauty in the U.S. and there's so much biodiversity, and I wanted a project that was close to my home, and I wanted something that I could really test the camera out with, which was on the eye of the pika.
The eye of the pika, the ear of the pika.
It was so much fun.
Bighorn sheep.
We saw so many animals.
Yeah.
We saw a lot more than pikas in those few days shooting. So it was amazing.
How about we introduce everybody to the debut of your video, which featured 4K 120. Let's roll Christy's video.
It's so good.
That is amazing. And again, I didn't watch this through the entirety, in its entirety until we got here. It just takes me right back there. The beauty of the slow motion, as you said, it slows things down so you can see things. What people don't realize about these pikas is they move as fast as small birds when they take
Faster.
off. And so delve into a little bit about how that camera met your creative and some of the things that you realized with this camera that were going to work. And I know you used the 500 5.6 PF lens with the new FTZ adapter, the FTZ2. You also used the 100 to 400, but talk a little bit about your experiences. What surprised you about the camera? What were you happy about?
Well, let's see. I'm relatively new to filmmaking. I'm kind of just a lot of times just wandering in the woods.
You'd never know that, would you?
I'm like, so this. I don't have a production team. I don't have a crew. I can't light the animals. It's very different to be able to. And it was scary too because I'm going, all right, I've got a couple of days. I got to make sure to get these wildlife shots, and I get this camera that's put into my hands that I've never used before. And I was scared, I'll admit, I was scared. I'm not used to having people watch me shoot. And we show up, and the very first thing, one of the first things we saw was the giant elk bugling. It was just me and you. It was the first time I had pulled the camera out, and I was nervous, but that camera got one of my favorite shots. I had never used it before. Got this really crisp focus. The autofocus was just intuitive. It was fast. It could get the wildlife. We were even shooting through tall grass for a little bit, and it was absolutely beautiful. So I was really, really impressed, and I'm going, okay, so I know that there's 9 things that catches the eye too, but I feel like there's a lot more than 9.
Right, because they don't have pikas on the list. They don't have elk because it worked with those. It worked with deer.
It worked with bighorns.
And I know Mr. Bighorn looking over the hill at me. Oh my goodness, I was in the wrong spot, but we were safe, right?
Will it work with the pika in a car being trailed on a truck
With
that's on a
flames.
train? That's that would impress me.
But yeah, I mean, it worked in all those scenarios.
It was pretty amazing, and to be able to, you know, a lot of times with wildlife, you have to be fast. You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to move. Sometimes if you're focusing over here, something will happen over here, and you have to move quickly. And the camera was able to pick up eyes, and I was not missing things, and it was just intuitive. And I think that it was amazing how much it could grab. Even the pika, when it jumped forward, it grabbed its eye from one spot to the other, and I didn't have to do anything. And with, like for me, I always think that work is more meaningful and powerful if you can connect to your heart. And when you have all these things you have to think of and the technology, it's hard to tap into your passion and your heart when you're shooting. This camera takes that technology barrier away. So when you're out shooting, you can really let yourself feel and let those feelings come through in the work, which makes me really excited.
You know, you talked about not a lot on the crew side, but you're just basically run with this naked camera and lens. You're not sitting with any kind of tripods or devices. You're working with the wildlife naturally in handheld. Mark, speak to the VR built into the camera.
Yeah. So the great thing about using our mirrorless platform is with the full frame cameras, they typically have, they always have IBIS built in. So that's in-body image stabilization, which is something our DSLRs don't have. So that's an advantage of doing filmmaking on these cameras. What's new in the Z9 is it now has something called synchro VR. So typically it gives you like a 5-stop range. On a couple of our lenses now, or 3 of our lenses now, it has synchro VR. So it's working with the VR in the lens as well as the VR in the body for a maximum of 6 stops VR. So there is improvement now in our vibration reduction. There's also an electronic VR. You can toggle that on and off, and you can use that in combination with a physical IBIS on there. So it gives you options when you're hand holding and you don't necessarily have the luxury of a gimbal or other type of tripods and whatnot. It makes those type of situations a little bit more easier if you're running and gunning type of shooting. Now, one thing I didn't mention before is that the bit rates on this, I did want to mention before we forget, we can do a lot of these things internally now, whereas in the past we would have to have an external device to do even something as simple as 10-bit. We can do that all internally. So 8K shooting 10-bit we can do an internal right to the memory card, including a lot of the 4K resolutions, and you were mentioning XSpeed 7. Doing that 4K 120 sequence, that would have been impossible just a few months ago with the chipsets that we've had. The XSpeed 7 processor that we have in here now is 10 times more powerful than the two processors that we had, the dual processors that we had before it. That's what can produce that type of footage at high resolution 4K at 120. So it's a powerful tool.
Pretty amazing. Now, the good news is we get to share with the audience some behind the scenes views of what we were going through. So let's roll the behind the scenes video from Christy.
I'm Christy Odom. I'm a wildlife photographer and filmmaker based in Longmont, Colorado. When I got the call to do the Z9 campaign, what I really wanted to do was a piece that highlighted all the wildlife that lives at high altitude, the amazing sounds of the mountains, and I wanted to do something that just really connected people with alpine wilderness. My assignment with the Z9 was to capture some video, 120 frames per second at 4K. So it was really when I looked through the camera and started seeing what it could do, started seeing what it could do with its autofocus, especially for the video work that I do, that I realized that this is going to take my work to a completely different level. Wildlife is fast. You've got to be quick, you've got to be on the move, you've got to be able to pivot. Now my current love is pikas. I'm so surprised that the autofocus could find the pika's eyes. I mean, we're talking about a tiny, tiny rabbit relative that's like the size of a potato, but it was able to see the eye of the pika and move around with the pika, and I was so excited about that. I love how the yellow-bellied marmots interact with each other. It's quite beautiful to see a juvenile and a mother. They were right next to each other, and I'm sitting there going, oh no, I want both eyes in focus. So I turn the camera on focus peaking. Focus peaking kicks in whenever you manually adjust the focus of your camera, and you can see where your focus is hitting your subject. Shifted my body in a position where when I saw that bright blue, my focus peaking I always put on blue because I find it to pop the most in nature. When I shift, when I saw that blue line on mama's eyes and on baby's eyes, I ended up getting both of the eyes at like a relatively shallow depth of field, but both of them tack sharp. To be able to go home and download those video files and then see them really big on my screen, it's like I felt that connection again. And I felt that connection in some ways even deeper because I'm able to see the eyelashes. I'm able to see the wind in the hair. I'm able to see things in more detail with the slow motion, with the 4K.
Oh, that's brilliant. This is getting better and better.
I'm convinced that pikas are cuter than koalas. I'm going to say it here and now.
You yield.
I'm going to yield, and we're going to go to karaoke tonight, and I'm going to sing Eye of the Pika.
Mr. Guionis.
Yes.
There is nothing you do short of spectacular, right? And you put your heart and soul into everything you do, and it's going to be pretty clear and apparent to everybody. Set up the video we're about to see of yours. What was you thinking real quick? And let's show everybody what you were able to produce in the most amazing music video.
Well, I photographed the singer. Like, we've done 3 music videos for Ashley Amber. She's got the curves of Beyonce. She has a fro hawk. There's no weak link. I was even looking at her toes to see if she's got webbed toes because like,
Where's the imperfection?
Where's the imperfection?
Perfectly imperfect?
Her skin, her smile, her confidence, she's flawless. She's incredible. So every single music video, which we've done on the Z series, the 6s and the 7s, has been really, really fun. But it has its challenges because you'll use a focus puller and you'll do that. I'm like, well, this time we're not going to do that at all. We're not going to use a focus puller, no monitor, no nothing for that particular scenario. And we'll rely and test how far we can push this. So it's a subtle video. It's very smooth. It's very sexy. And I want to see how the colors come out of the camera and see how the focus performs with the slider and different keyframes, which I'll talk about afterwards.
Sounds like you were describing yourself, smooth and sexy.
Stop it!
Ladies and gentlemen, the debut of Jerry Guionis' music video.
Nicely done, Jerry. That's beautiful.
To me, Music Video Award, #1 next year. That's pretty amazing. Baby, it's you. Is there anything you can't do?
Photoshop.
Tell me about how the Z9 met your expectations and how it all fit within your project.
You know, I mean, I'm looking for great color out of camera, and most filmmakers will know that you'll put it on a flat mode so you can do it. But I could have easily put on a standard picture control and it'd be perfect. So when you're looking at these lenses, they are cinematic lenses. I mean, to me, and to actually put it with a body that actually can suit it was spectacular. And the ability to actually, that first shot that you see, that keyframe that happened, so it went, she was right next to that clock tower, and then it actually, the second keyframe went onto a silhouette and it kept focused the entire time. And that was incredible. So that excited me. And then, now what you don't know, behind the scenes, I'm actually gesturing and doing everything. So she trusts me so much that over the last sort of 4 music videos that I would literally do this, she'd mirror me, and I'll do this, she's doing this. So it's quite funny. It'd actually be a better video.
She was channeling you then with
She
her
was
moves.
channeling me. So she was
you had the sexy moves.
Yes. Let's just call it like it is. But so one day we'll do a BTS video where I'll show the proper thing. But the good thing is that I'm not worried about the focus like missing, because the worst thing in the world is you get an incredible shot and you look back at the footage and like, oh, I have a very low tolerance for that. So I was gesturing, I was doing this. If you notice those motions where she was doing this, I'm like, cover your face. I want to see if the focus will lock on your eyes still. And it did the whole time. So that was pretty spectacular. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, listen, right now we're going to run a little bit of what happened behind the scenes with you, about a minute or so, and then when we close out the segment, we're going to run the full 12-minute BTS. Give people a chance to really sit back and absorb it. But can we run that snippet of Jerry's BTS now?
Hi, I'm Jerry Guionis, a portrait, fashion and wedding photographer and filmmaker. How much can we rely and have confidence in the Nikon flagship mirrorless camera, the Z9? And I'm telling you, we can. As a wedding photographer, I have confidence that this camera can perform in low light at ridiculous ISOs, catch contrast, catch focus, and it's been the camera that we've been really waiting for and yearning for. This is the one, guys. As a portrait photographer, I can put it on autofocus, put my camera on a tripod, engage my clients, and know that the camera can focus at shallow depth of fields at 1.2 and 1.8 and all those kinds of things. As a fashion photographer, I get the colors that I'm wanting and those beautiful colors that, again, Nikon is famous for. And now that I'm actually been photographing performers the last couple of years, I'm capturing these incredible athletes, these world-class athletes in full flight at the peak of their performance. And I can do that now with full confidence. And as a filmmaker and developing my filmmaking skills the last couple of years, I can tell you that actually filming in 8K in camera with no need of another device is absolutely incredible. All I can say, guys, that you've got to check out this camera, because to be able to create all of these shots in 1 week and test it out fully, and it did not fail once, that is what I've been waiting for. That's what you've been waiting for. But I hope you enjoyed the images that we shared and the films that we shared. And remember, you don't have to be the best. You simply have to be better than last week.
Yes, you do, and you are better than last week, guaranteed, guys. That was pretty amazing. It just really does blow me away, the level of talent that we have sitting with us right now, and it makes our lives a lot easier. We got a few more minutes to close down. I know, Jerry, both you and Christy had opportunities to do still shooting as well. Just speak to that real quick and what the experience was from video transition to still, and does this make this the ultimate tool for you because you got a little bit of everything?
Ladies first.
Wonderful. Well, photography was always my first love, so to have a camera that I can use that autofocus, get the eyes, have real fast response to wildlife, like, it's going to become my everything. You know, I went fully mirrorless about a year ago, and there were a few things I missed about a D5 and an 850. And when this came out, it bridged that gap. It had the mirrorless technology, but it had those things that I missed about my old camera systems. It was like all together in one. So ultimate tool for both photos and video, and I cannot wait to get my hands on one, like permanently, not just for a temporary shoot.
Mr. Guionis.
I'm very much a focus and recompose shooter. Like I'll move the button to the eye and then I'll focus. I'm very precise like that. So I don't really come across from a sports perspective where I'm photographing hundreds of frames, because I like to sort of calculate what I'm doing and go for it accordingly. Then all of a sudden, because I'm photographing performers, especially the last couple of years and living in Vegas, I'm like, let me just try this out. I couldn't fathom, can you even grab a second and divide it into 120? I mean, that boggles my mind. So I'm like, all right, Nikon, let's see how good you are. Here I am, 120 frames a second, AFC, and I've got this, one of the best breakdancers in the world, just flipping and moving and everything like that, and I'm just going like this. And then and the ballerina as well. And I look back at the, it's amazing.
Like that?
I look back and I'm like, it looked like a little 8mm film going all the way. And then I'm like, I just chose the best frame. I'm like, well, it sort of takes away I wasn't really good. It was a camera that was good. I just pressed the button. I'm like, yeah, so.
I think it's, you take what the engineers build from scratch here in a fully electronic camera, you give it to people like you that are really talented, and it really is your talent that makes this tool shine, I think, in so many respects. Mark, I'm going to come back to you for one last thing, two last things actually. I want you to address the card technologies, 2 dual CF Express cards that take Class B, utilize Class B technology, and then close out a little bit with some of the firmware updates that will be coming that will make this an even better video tool.
Yeah, so first of all, for the stills and for the video, it's really practical that we've implemented CF Express Type B cards. I think that's a big advantage because those capacities are bigger and it facilitates, the resolution and frame rates that we're getting now. And we've made the decision to make them both the same. So, in other cameras, you'd have one CF Express and another one maybe an SD card. Now having dual CF Express, I think it's better for the workflow of the photographer or the videographer that they're just dealing with one card type. But it's the best card type on the market right now. It's, as I said, the fastest frame rates for stills that I can actually sustain those, 120 or 20 frames per second raw. So that's an intentional decision to do that. And what kind of facilitates that is going with a bigger body. We can actually fit those bigger cards in here.
And you're pumping 8K video through those cards.
Yeah, pumping 8K video. So everything on this camera is kind of like bigger. The resolution's bigger, the body's bigger. But another thing that's bigger too is, before I forget, is the HDMI port. It's a full HDMI port on this now. We didn't go with the mini or even the micro. We went with the full HDMI. I think production crews will really like that from this too. But you wanted me to touch on the firmware updates. So we don't necessarily do this. We typically keep that very tight-lipped. But what we are doing is we're announcing a firmware update, a major one next year, that's going to be unlocking hidden features within the Z9, and that'll be sometime in 2022. I can tip you off that it's going to unlock 8K 60. So you're going to get additional frame rate at 8K coming next year. So that's going to be really exciting.
You guys excited about that? I don't do nearly as much filmmaking as you or camera operating, but that sounds pretty darn good to me. Well, listen, I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your creative, your ideas, your thoughts, your technical. You guys never cease to amaze me. It was so much fun working with you guys, as much as I've been brutalized physically at different levels and altitudes. But we can't thank you guys for tuning in and turning this on. And if you watched the first session of just still photography with the Z9, now you've got the video portion of this. If you missed any part of this, we're going to be rerunning this on our social pages. So check out NikonUSA.com. Go to the Z9 homepage. You'll get all the technical details that you want and end result. You'll see a lot of this end result there and stuff that's been created for this launch. This has been one heck of a day for us. And man, in my 38 years at Nikon, this is one of those days that really stands up as one of the tops. Mark, I think you agree. You've been here for a long time, and these are the special days for us. So I can't thank you guys enough. Thank you guys for tuning in. We hope to see you soon. And by all means, get out there, shoot still, shoot video, and we'll see you all next time.
Hi, I'm Jerry Guionis, a portrait, fashion and wedding photographer and filmmaker. I have had one of the best weeks of my life, and I've spent it with the Nikon Z9, Nikon's flagship mirrorless camera. Ever since the Nikon Z6 and the Z7, I've been all in with mirrorless, all in. And all eyeballs were on this camera after a week with the Z9. I'm telling you, it is amazing. I was given this camera, and here's an assignment. Do what you do, Jerry. I'm like, I photograph portraits, I photograph weddings, fashion, performers, and I want to explore every single genre. So last 5 days, we've been photographing all these different things. And it's come in the right time in my life too, because in the last year and a half, I have done so much more filmmaking than in my entire career. My video partner, Jason Neistat, we actually worked together and we've developed an incredible crew. We've shot music videos this year, we've shot documentaries, we've shot short little films. And all of a sudden, I've got this 8K video that I can actually play with, and it is a serious option for the actual incredible filmmakers out there that want something amazing with incredible glass, incredible color, straight out of camera. Now, let me talk to you about the week that we've actually had. So Sunday night, we're photographing in low light, this very, very dark and moody, dramatic location. And I tested out the low light focus and it was amazing. And it's what you'd expect from a flagship camera. We photographed at 6400 ISO, 10,000 ISO. So if you can imagine the exposure and how dark this was, and we used autofocus, and we tested out the auto area AF, the small area AF, the large area AF. It locked on focus very, very quickly. We used existing light. I photographed Wyatt underneath a lamp, or like 6400 ISO. Every single time it was in focus. We also can shoot 4K at 120 frames a second in slow-mo. I'm getting shots that I never would be, like I've never gotten before in my career. The color straight out of camera, of course, is incredible. I think Nikon is famous for getting true color out of camera. So we photographed wedding and fashion that first evening, and it was incredible, it was exhilarating. And then we spent the second and the third days shooting a music video. So Ashley Amber, an incredible artist that we've actually filmed before in a few music videos, was amazing. And what we did is we tested it. So what do you do when you have 8K? Well, first of all, you need a bit of hard drive space, but it's worth the quality, guys. It's 8K. If you photograph an entire scene, you can literally halve your entire area and you're still getting 4K. That is absolutely incredible. Now, the first location, it looked like we're in the back of a clock tower. We were actually doing a couple of different keyframes. So we're going from her face being completely lit and auto area AF, and then we slid all around and did a keyframe where it turned back into her silhouette and it still kept focus. If you're photographing a silhouette, which we did of Ashley in front of that clock tower, for example, it grabbed focus, it grabbed the contrast. It actually knew what we were doing. It gives me confidence, it gives me freedom. And again, that liberates me that I can spend more time focusing on engaging my client, more time on my composition, my creativity, letting the camera really worry about the focus. I know I'm going to get great color. I know I'm going to get an incredible file. Optics is undeniable, but putting all of these features in an incredible body and being able to achieve all these different things, and if you're a filmmaker, you've got 4K slow-mo, you've got 8K, you've got iFocus, you've got everything that you can rely upon. On the second day with Ashley Amber, we actually photographed and filmed in this grand staircase. It was beautiful. It was really amazing. But it really lended itself to actually testing how far we could push the capabilities of using the eye autofocus, and we can again spend more time directing and bringing out the best in her. We actually put a slider right in the middle of the staircase and slid right in. It kept focus on her the entire time. Then I thought to myself, wait a second, let me test this even further. So what we did is we actually had Ashley sit down on a staircase, and then we had this beautiful ornate little banister and staircase, and the eye would jump across the bars of this ornate framework and keep the focus the entire time. So we tested that, and again, to be able to do that, having a slider left and right and actually change the plane of focus and continue that, that would be very, very difficult for a human being to actually do with a little focus pull and looking at a monitor. So that was incredible. Really loved that. Then we ended up getting her on the balcony. That was the last couple of shots. This beautiful bokeh that we actually had, and it was just beautiful. It rendered the colors beautifully, and it was so much fun, and I can't wait for you to see the finished product. Then we come to our fourth day, and we're photographing this incredible couple, and as soon as I met them, I just fell in love with both of them. They're a beautiful couple. They just mix in really well, and they felt to me like you've got this beautiful dark-skinned princess, and then you've got this old school cool vibe and rock star on a day off type of vibe. And I quickly had all these photographs in my head. Now, I've been in love with the sepia picture control. Sepia is monotone. It's glorified tones of brown and white. But the sepia picture control actually desaturates the image and adds sepia it just mutes the colors and gives us this really earthy flavor. We had an incredible time. We shot beautiful portraits, and that was just the morning. Then we photographed Wasta, this incredible designer. She's an ex-Zumanity performer. She's from African descent. She's just really proud of her heritage, and I'm in love with her, all her designer wear. I'm like, let's actually photograph you and celebrate your heritage. Let's celebrate everything about you. She didn't go halfway with this. She was wearing 100-year-old leather garments that she hand-sewed, this incredible outfit. And we photographed her, and again, the colors were spectacular. Rendering her skin tone was absolutely beautiful. And then I said to her, I said, I then want to photograph you, presuming Skittles just threw up on a photograph. I want all the color in the world in this photograph. It was absolutely perfection. Now, while we were there, I'm like, okay, to this point, I didn't quite test, can the eye autofocus keep up at 20,000 ISO at 200 speed at f2 or 1.2 and 1.8? And she was moving her head left and right, forward and back, even scooching down away from the camera and bringing her head up. She was turning around. As she was turning her face around, the eye autofocus kept the focus on her head. She turned around and bang, it went on the eye again. So again, I'm getting these shots that I've never really gotten before because I can totally trust and have confidence in this new technology. Now, I've got goosebumps. I don't know if you can see this closely. We hired incredible performers. I'm like, let me test this properly. So here we are. The very camera that you're actually seeing me on right now, we use this slider left and right, front and back with the performers. We photographed different angles. We photographed into flare, into smoke, and could the eye autofocus catch up? We had Luca, one of the best breakdancers in the world, and he was so passionate. He was so into his art. It was absolutely exhilarating. Inhaling the atmosphere and the energy of the room and giving everything to this shoot. I grew up in the 80s, so seeing him do the helicopter and jumping up and down and doing flips. Then I heard the specs, and I didn't believe it until I did it, photographing at 120 frames a second. I can't fathom that. Basically, press the shutter. I'm at photographing at f1.2, f1.8 at 1,000th of a second with an electronic shutter. Now that I'm photographing performers, especially in the last year and a half, why would I gamble with the peak of flight? I'm going to photograph at 120 frames a second and have a look. And guess what? I would go back and it almost looked like an 8mm short film. So one, it was actually really fun to see, but I could just choose the best shot rather than actually be a bit more prude with how many photographs that I take. There I was photographing these incredible tap dancers, John and Sean, are world-class athletes. I've seen them perform. I didn't actually realize who they were, but I've seen shows where they were performing in there. And I love the art form, but their joy, they've got this old school swagger with this contemporary charm, and to hear them tap, and they're just perfectionists. And that's what I love about them, is that they expect a lot of themselves. And I'm photographing 20 photographs in 1 second. And again, I would simply go back and look at the peak of their flight, and I know I've nailed it. I'm like, I took the shots and I look around, I'm looking left and right, I'm like, guys, I'm sort of done. I've already got gold here, what do I do here? And again, I'm getting shots that I never would normally get. So we filmed Natalia, this incredible dancer with this cylinder sort of going left and right and forward and back. It's absolutely beautiful. It focused on her eye, even past these cylinders sort of going left and right around her, which I found extraordinary. And it rendered the colors beautifully too. So there I was, I'm photographing Marina the ballerina. Now in this particular environment, as you can see, with smoke all around, one would consider this to be hard to focus, but the eye autofocus kept it every single time. I just have to click the shutter, let the camera do the heavy lifting, and life is good. I think gone are the times where you might photograph 10 frames, especially in full length, and hoping that maybe 1 or 2 might be in focus. How much can we rely and have confidence in the Nikon flagship mirrorless camera, the Z9? And I'm telling you, we can. As a wedding photographer, I have confidence that this camera can perform in low light at ridiculous ISOs, catch contrast, catch focus, and it's been the camera that we've been really waiting for and yearning for
this is the one, guys. As a portrait photographer, I can put it on an eye autofocus, put my camera on a tripod, engage my clients, and know that the camera can focus at shallow depth of fields at 1.2 and 1.8 and all those kinds of things. As a fashion photographer, I get the colors that I'm wanting and those beautiful colors that, again, Nikon is famous for. And now that I'm actually been photographing performers the last couple of years, I'm capturing these incredible athletes, these world-class athletes in full flight at the peak of their performance. And I can do that now with full confidence. And as a filmmaker and developing my filmmaking skills the last couple of years, I can tell you that actually filming in 8K in camera with no need of another device is absolutely incredible. All I can say, guys, that you've got to check out this camera, because to be able to create all of these shots in 1 week and test it out fully and it did not fail once, that is what I've been waiting for. That's what you've been waiting for. But I hope you enjoyed the images that we shared and the films that we shared. And remember, you don't have to be the best. You simply have to be better than last week.